Okay, I think we are ready to start. Good evening, and thank you all for coming. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Mr. Mukherjee here. And I'm really grateful to him for coming up from New York, Bombay to New York and up to Boston to share with us some of his experiences and thoughts about museums in South Asia. Mr. Mukherjee is the director of what was formerly the Prince of Wales Museum, and you see the name now on the slide, and that stands for Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya, which is the new name of the museum, and I think he'll use it interchangeably.
In short, CSMVS.
Yes. And our airport is also uses the same name, and so does our railway station. And so people often go to the wrong place. They come here to take a flight, an international flight, and so there's a lot of confusion around this. But in any case, he's been really instrumental in reinventing this museum as a real hub, a civic hub for the city. And his sort of work operates at three levels, so to speak. One at the level of the museum, where he's been working very hard to make it the civic sort of node. He also initiated an ambitious plan to create a master plan for the museum and has undertaken all sorts of upgrading of the museum facilities to make it more relevant for contemporary Mumbai. He also works more at the level of the city as a citizen. He is sort of involved with Mumbai's Heritage Committee, which is responsible for the preservation of about 700 buildings that are listed, as well as 14 precincts in the area, and he sits on the Heritage Committee. It was the first such legislation in the country, and so it is a really important body which is complemented by a Metropolitan Regional Development Authority body that funds these efforts, and he also sits on that sort of group and is an active member of that committee. And nationally, he is a trustee on the board of Indian Museums of the Indian Museum in Kolkata, and is a nominee of the Ministry of Culture, member of the National Culture Fund, member of the Advisory Committee of the National Gallery of Modern Art in Mumbai, and also works on a number of advisory bodies that operate internationally related to museums, archaeology, and art in general. Recently, they've started a postgraduate program at the museum, which is something he's also been directed, and it has affiliation and recognition now of the University of Mumbai. I think among the first such sort of courses in the city, at least, from what I understand, perhaps. So he's someone who I think has been an active citizen there, and I think the transformation at the museum has been recognized and something that I think we're all, as citizens of Mumbai, me too, Homi, others are very proud of. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Mukherjee.
Thank you. Thank you, Rahul. I'm so glad to be here with all of you. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to interact. It's always a pleasure to discuss something about CSMVS. I'm not taking the full name. Sometimes, people say, your museum's name is as complicated as yours. But this is a kind of obsession in our city, everywhere. He was a great Maratha king, and most of the institutes are named after, and this is a recent development. We are quite known as Prince of Wales Museum of Western India, and we love to call us Prince of Wales Museum of Western India. And before moving to museum, the background, I need to talk a little bit about the city. We are located in the western part of India, surrounded by Arabian Sea. The history of Bombay goes back to prehistoric time. Documented evidence of human habitation dates back to 250 before Christ. Portuguese captured the islands in 1534, the 7 islands. The 7 islands were offered to Charles II of England in 1661 as dowry for Portuguese princess. Again, islands were in turn leased to British East India Company in 1668 for a sum of £10 per annum. The company found the deep harbor on the east coast of the island to be ideal for setting up their first port in the subcontinent. The population quickly rose from 10,100 in 1661 to 60,000 in 1675. The city eventually became the quarter of the Bombay Presidency under the British Empress. Shipbuilding was the first industry, and business was spices, opium, textiles, and trade. By the middle of the 19th century, city merchants were trading independently with countries all over the world. The natural harbor and the civil infrastructure made the city a port of opportunity. The population grew. It was a multicultural, multilingual, multinational melting pot driven by dreams of success and money. Different communities started coming to Mumbai. Then in 1861 came to American Civil War. The faraway event brought about the great Bombay Bonanza. In just 4 years, the city's profit from cotton exceeded 80 million pounds sterling, and that wealth was partly used for the making of Bombay. Why the history of Bombay is important to understand my institute? Lot of things started during the company time. There was no proper infrastructure. Nobody paid any attention to culture. Company started shifting Indian art from temples, from monuments. So practically the looting of Indian heritage started during the company time, and there was no concept of museum or cultural institute. The first cultural institute, the establishment of Asiatic Society in 1784 in Kolkata, and the first public museum in Kolkata, Indian Museum Kolkata, was established in 1814. But we could see, this is from Bombay to Mumbai. We could see some changes in the beginning of 19th century. People started thinking about cultural institutes and the influence of British Museum and the wealth created during that time. And towards the end of 19th century, some institute in Madras, Calcutta, Mumbai. Towards the beginning of 20th century, some eminent citizens of Bombay, they felt it's very important to have a cultural space in Bombay. There was a get-together, social get-together like us, in the Asiatic Society, Bombay, in 1904, headed by Sir Firoz Shah Mehta. He was Congress president, a very eminent personality, and a resolution was passed. The city needs a cultural institute. And British government, though initially they were not interested, they were little reluctant because of financial constraint, but they were compelled to accept the resolution, and the government agreed to provide the land, which is I'll come back. which is popularly known as semicircular, the crescent site. So land was provided, and it was a condition that building has to be built with public contribution. So building was built with public contribution. Thank God, the visit of Prince of Wales in 1905. So there was a momentum. So land was provided, and Prince of Wales came to Bombay. Foundation stone was laid on 11 November 1905, and we still have the statue of Prince of Wales in the museum garden. And for your information, that is the only surviving statue of British Raj in the city. Everything they removed, and somehow we are, protecting him. You never know, one day they will remove it, because they changed the name. And it was decided to commemorate the visit of Prince of Wales. Money was collected. British architect Whitted was appointed for the museum building. Work started in 1909. It was completed in 1914. He was quite known for Indo-Saracenic style. It's a combination of Islamic, Hindu, and Western architectural elements. Even the concept was so secular in those days. And for your information, till today, museum is supported by the people of Mumbai, not by the government. So building was built with public contribution, and the entire museum till today supported by the people. And due to World War I, building was converted into military hospital, and finally on 10 January 1922, museum was open to the public. So this is, the location, we call it crescent site in the cultural district. There are other cultural institutes around the museum. Here we have the National Gallery of Modern Art, and the Kalaghoda. The whole area is known as Kalaghoda district behind the museum. Every year we have Kalaghoda Fest. It's a huge, street festival. Of course, Rahul was one of the architects of that festival. And then we have University of Mumbai, that side, that corner. This is the library, that David Sassoon Library, and then we have that UDRI and other institutes behind the museum. There is a public gallery, Jahangir Art Gallery, within the campus. It's a very active place in Mumbai. The designer Whitted, foundation stone was laid by Prince of Wales in the center of the museum garden. Just little bit about the history. And finally, the doors of the museum were opened to the public on 10 January 1922. But in those days, the management had a vision, and that this is very important for any institute to have the vision. A monumental and grand buildings surrounded by an exquisite garden, an art and archaeological museum where people could see their cultural heritage and develop a pride in their past. So this is how galleries looked. And due to many reasons, most of our galleries remained static, unchanged for years. And then we came in the picture in 2007. We all realized that it's time to change. Now the problem we face, the challenges we face in most of our cultural institutes in India, shrinking visitor base, low resource generation, insufficient artifact maintenance, insufficiently trained staff, low morale, labor issues, static display, lack of institutional vision. But the strengths, location of the institute, the building, the collection, curatorial team, and an autonomous management. These are the strengths. With these strengths, we started rethinking. So, to address the challenges, increasing the scope for cultural interaction, making the museum more relevant in a changing world. Having said that, what is interesting in Bombay Museum, from the beginning, community participation in the construction of the building, in developing the collection, major collection came from the Tata family in 1922. Sir Ratan Tata, Jamshedji Tata had two sons. The youngest one, Sir Ratan Tata, who didn't take much interest in family business. He was a different kind of personality. He took more interest in art and culture, collected best art pieces from all over the world. He was a kind of person who consulted experts before buying any art object, and brought the entire collection to Bombay, then Bombay, in 1921, and offered his collection to museum as gift to the museum. And later on, he was followed by his brother, Sir Dorab Tata. Actually, Sir Dorab, he took interest in family business, but he was hugely influenced by his wife, Meherbai, and Meherbai encouraged Dorab to take little interest in art. So he started collecting European paintings, and that is why we have 220 European paintings, British artist, French artist, Dutch artist, and according to experts, they are national treasures in their countries. So thanks to Tata Brothers, museum got the collection. And later on, many private collectors offered their collection. There was an eminent collector, Khandalawala. He was our chairman, and he gave his entire collection to museum. And then Amravati Gupta. There are many people, many individuals, they started offering their collection to museum. So collection grew with the time. Problem, nothing was moving. As you know, India is a very complicated country. Financial constraint, political interference. As you see, they changed the name in 1998 from Prince of Wales Museum. They did not bother, even the trustees, even the management, to consult. They changed the name. So this is the way country function. And financial constraint, it remained static for many years. Number of visitors went down. Like keeping the gate open, if you feel like coming, you come. So that kind of situation we had to face. But something started moving 2007, 2008 onwards. We all realized it's important for us to change with the society, with the changing world. And started a new initiative to establish our image of the institute, that this is not a museum. This is an educational institute, a center for world cultures, and a civic space for social interaction. museum started involving NGOs, the different NGOs started participating in museum activities. We got affiliation from the University of Mumbai. We started different academic programs. For the first time, museum established its education department. We didn't have a proper education department, which is very common in American museums and European museums. But today, we have the best education department in the country. Over 200,000 children visit every year. We created space for conservation, and conservation center, as you know, hospital for the museum. But never in past museum thought about conservation center. And today we have, I have no hesitation to say, the best conservation center in the country. And then we all realized that it's important for museum to create space for visitors. And with the help of Rahul designed the visitor center, which we added in 2011. So there was, there was a small, what do you call, chopra for ticket counter, shed for ticket counter. As you enter, there was no proper ticket counter, luggage counter. So today we have, proper ticket counter, luggage counter. For the first time, we added museum shop, which is very common in Europe and America. And now we have one of the best museum shops in the country. We have auditorium where programs happening every day. Our dear friend Dr. Bhava delivered lecture last time, and it was packed. People, they were waiting outside. So it's a happening, space. Every day something happening, and then there is a cafeteria. So this is something we added. And then what we did, we all realized it's important for museum to change all existing galleries. So we upgraded, we reorganized almost all our galleries. For the first time, we added modern and contemporary art section. Museum was looked at art and archaeology. That is the image we created, and then we felt that it's important for us to create space for contemporary art. And collection came to us in 2009. There is a gentleman, Parsi gentleman, Jahangir Nicholson. He gave his collection, entire collection, to the trustees of the museum on loan, long-term loan, and we created space within the museum. So a lot of activities, program, initiative started. Looking at collection, a bit of everything. I will not say it encyclopedic, but we have European paintings. We have Far East collection, Chinese, Japanese. We have Himalayan art, and very strong Indian art collection. We are known for our miniatures, Indian miniature collection. So infrastructure development, cafeteria, landscape, audio guide. We have audio guide available in 7 languages. So when you visit my museum, you will hear your language, but when I visit your museum, I don't hear my language. That's the, we have almost all languages, important languages available, making it more interesting. The conservation center, we need more space. We all realize that, but we had nothing, so we created new space. Today, the center working in collaboration with Courtauld Institute, British Museum, Met, Rydberg Museum, Zurich, students from Kotal Institute, every year they come and work in the conservation center. So some kind of international interaction started. This is very important for any institute. Of course, you have a different problem, we have a different problem. We all realized to do something in India, the most challenging job, how you change the mindset of your staff. So transforming staff to transform the museum. The kind of notion they have, when you propose something, they say it is not possible. So that so much negativity in their minds, and how do you change them? So lot of interaction with the staff, making them understand that it's important for all of us to change. World is changing. Of course, to some extent, the impact of globalization. In one of the forums, intellectual forums, I made a statement. Couple of years ago, 7, 8 years ago, there was no media criticism on cultural institutes. People accept it. Whether you are functioning or not functioning, people accept it. But because of globalization, people started visiting, and large number of middle class, Indian middle class, started visiting abroad. So when they come, first time when they visit New York, first thing they do, they visit Met, they visit Guggenheim, they visit MoMA. Large number of Indian visitors visiting foreign museums. And then they started questioning, they started comparing. So some kind of impact we see in last 5, 6 years, and media also started criticizing Indian institutes. The kind of situation we had, scholars community, they know very well. You approach any Indian cultural institute for any image for your study, you will get very negative reply. So they are not willing to share. So things started happening in a right direction. We all realized it's important for us to change, and collection belongs to world community. We don't believe that my culture is better than your culture. It's everyone's culture, and everyone should have access to art and culture. So we started creating the environment for the staff, go and see other institutes. And again, thanks to people of Mumbai, when we started delivering, they came around us, you need money, you need support, we are there to give you support. So there is a huge hunger. What we are lacking? Leadership. There is a leadership crisis in the country. There is no financial crisis in the country. In fact, today I was talking to Meena. I said, money that comes, say that is secondary. That's not primary. Today, we don't face any problem. Just very recent development. We are creating another complex. It's going to be children's museum. I was in touch with Rahul for a long time. That city has nothing to offer to children. 23 million population, and there is nothing for children, and they spend their quality time in malls. What they are learning. And being a cultural institute, it is our responsibility, our duty to create space for children. It was going on for quite some time. He developed the design, and with the help of people, we had a lot of anxiety being grade 1 heritage precinct in India. If you are graded heritage precinct grade 1, you have more don'ts than the do's. So a lot of anxiety, but somehow we could manage. So what I'm trying to say, that I can see some changes, that people started thinking in a positive manner. So they approved our proposal, and it didn't take much time to raise money, just $700,000. In America you count millions. In India we count $100,000. That's a big money. And who gave us money? Bank of America. And Bank of America, of course, they supported a couple of our projects. And there is a rivalry, Bank of America and Citibank. So Citibank, they want to support some project. And they are all looking for good projects. And when they got to know the project, Children's Museum, the CEO of Bank of America, India, she phoned me. She said, Mr. Mukherjee, I am booking this project, and you are not supposed to approach anybody else. And now I was in New York attending Bizot Group meeting, and I met the representatives, and they confirmed their participation. So what I'm trying to say, there is no dearth of money, but people are looking for projects, people are looking for leadership. They want to see that their money is spent wisely. So that's going to be, the first children's museum in the city. So quite some time we spent on training, staff training. They were sent all over the world. And we created, for the first time, there was a financial crisis. Now I can say, as director of the museum, and very few directors can say that we are self-sufficient. We are self-sufficient. Even corporates or anybody supports us or not, we will sustain. So today we have a marketing strategy, staff participating in the development. People are coming around us. It's like the community participated in the building, the construction of the building. Same way people are coming around us, and things are happening. And then this is very important aspect. How do you connect with society? We created separate department, education department, and then the approach. You want to create elitist institute or an institute for all? There was a debate. Looking at our situation, we all felt that it's important for us to create space where everyone is welcomed. Practically, it's enlighten those who are not enlightened. Those who are enlightened, they have access to everywhere. But what about the people not enlightened? So some institute has to play a positive role. There are areas where we don't have access, but there are NGOs already working in those areas. And that created huge image in the society, good image in the society. There are 30 NGOs, 30 NGOs working with our education department. They are working for prostitutes, construction laborers, children, HIV patients, whom we don't consider as part, an integral part of society. So we feel that it's important for a cultural institute, when you talk about inclusive policy, that how you include. And it's not that just doing one program, sustainability, that is something we have to think. And we continued. And initially we started with 2 NGOs, and now 33 NGOs working with us. So we are taking help. We are taking their help to reach those areas. And who sponsors? Tata Trust. The major sponsorship comes from the Tata Trust, and hundreds of individual donors. They don't need any acknowledgement, and they say it. Please don't acknowledge. So starting from $5,000 to $100,000 individual donation. I'm talking in terms of dollars to support such program. And now we are increasing our staff. Department is expanding. Idea is to cross South Mumbai border. South Mumbai is always considered as very fortunate area where you have everything, all cultural institutes are located. So idea is to cross the border, reach out to those who cannot come to museum. So these are some of the activities, programs, and I have the statistics. In 2005, 6, 7, our number of visitors was less than 500,000, and today we have over a million visitors visiting museum, and 200,000 children visit museum. We call it museum experience. It's not just visiting museum for the sake of visiting. So trying our level best to share something, and before they leave they carry something with them. And then another initiative, I said a center, center of world cultures. There is another institute, NCPA. They bring world music. And for your information, perhaps we are the only institute in the country bringing world culture every year. Started in 2008, first initiative, Indian Life and Landscape exhibition from the Victoria and Albert Museum, London, and that was their first exhibition in India. Unfortunately, there was no taker. It came to Mumbai, just imagine, and after the Mumbai show, it went back to London. And when government got to know, I was after them, I was telling them that it's coming, take, but they were not willing. And then some new secretary came, Johar Sarkar. He got to know that exhibition is going back to London, and then he was after. Exhibition went back to London, and again government of India brought that exhibition back to Delhi. So this is the story, some anecdotes how country function. And then another major exhibition we brought, which was a huge success, Egyptian collection from the British Museum. Very recently, we did two major exhibitions, Cyrus Cylinder. Cyrus Cylinder was, I think, traveling within US, and after US, it came to Mumbai, and only Mumbai. Even the Egyptian collection from the British Museum, it was a major show. It came to Mumbai. Delhi could not take advantage. Calcutta could not take advantage. It went back. Cyrus Cylinder, just imagine Cyrus Cylinder, came to. And then for the first time, we brought Rubens, Peter Paul Rubens paintings from Belgium. And in India, first time, So some initiative, that idea is to bring world culture every year. So people of Mumbai, they get an opportunity to see different cultures. This is very important, that why all the time you look at Indian culture, that you need to look at different cultures. So we started bringing different exhibitions from different institutes. So these are some of the exhibition views. And what is important, increasing scope for cultural interaction, different organizations, NGOs, they are using the museum space. We all realized museum is an integral part of society. If society suffers, we suffer. If there is any issue in the society, institute has to address the issue, sharing the space, and we have no political color. So at least we have friends, Rahul and Dr. Bhava, they know that many important meetings like heritage, Rahul was talking about heritage regulations. In fact, it started from the Prince of Wales Museum. So if there is any transport issue, discussion, they need space, museum. Kalaghoda Street Festival, that entire museum space used. Social debates, museum space. So museum gradually opening its doors, becoming an integral part of society. People started visiting, participating in different activities, programs, international conference, Commonwealth Association of Museums, 17 countries participated. Personalities from all over the world, they share their experience with Mumbai audience. Symphony orchestra, music, performance, fine arts. Yale University students, they are performing in the museum. Fashion, design, everything. So that's, I thought I put it at the end strategy. Yes, optimum utilization of available resources, an integrated approach towards management, confidence building, that's very important. That like Obama, yes we can. So that factor helped immensely, and effective communication channel, establishment of planning and execution department. There was no planning, there was no execution, and execution is as important as planning. Capacity building, collection management, empowering staff with dignity, collective decision and defined responsibility, creating opportunity for staff to demonstrate skill. That if you are able to demonstrate skill, you will be awarded. If you are doing well, you will come up. Preparing master plan for transformation. So first time we prepared our master plan 2020, and now we started working 2050, because 2020 it's going to be complete in another 2-3 years. So that's all. Thank you.
So let's open it up for a conversation, questions people might have. Susan.
Yes, Susan.
I'm curious to know if you have begun dialogues with other institutions in India who might be wanting to move in similar directions.
Something started happening. We are taking help of Ministry of Culture, Government of India. They started deputing some institutes for training program. They come and spend 5 days at the museum. But there is not much intercultural institutions initiative or collaboration. What I say, it's very difficult to bring exhibition from National Museum Delhi to Mumbai, but it's much easier bringing exhibition from British Museum to Mumbai.
Just wait for the mic, yeah. Question. If you might introduce yourself. Thank you.
I'm Gina Kim. I am the assistant professor in the History of Art and Architecture department here at Harvard. And thank you so much for that presentation. I'm sorry I missed the first part of it. And I think the last time I was at the museum is more than 10 years ago, actually. And this looks so much different. And I was, in fact, looking for information to contact you because I'm actually going to be coming in December. And I was just so surprised to see like the website actually. That's the face of the museum, and it's just so wonderfully done. And as you were mentioning earlier about like how leadership was necessary in like this transformation, and I have a similar question as Susan did about this sort of within India, because I have visited so many institutions, like museological institutions, and I think it's unique in Mumbai that it's, as you're emphasizing this, actually their power, political structure, like the power of the museum actually lies within people and within society, and that actually seems to enable the museum to go into this like very progressive direction. And whereas, you know, with the government institutions, it's very hard to move that way, it seems, and it's such a difficult juggling, and especially even if you have initiatives, it's just, you know, you're transferred somewhere else, like in 3 years of, you know, being in a position. And so I wonder if, I mean, if you could take a leadership role even like, you know, nationally in this manner. I don't know, maybe this is like too much of a like burden in terms of, you know, creating maybe like national committee of the museum directors of some such that like there would be dialogues at least. And I wonder if you have sort of been approached for this kind of directions.
See, I'm trying to enlighten through writings. We have museum newsletter every quarter, and it goes to all museums, inviting curators, directors for seminar. So time to time, you know, CSMVS organizing seminar. There was a seminar on museum training. So they get an opportunity to see, you know, best practices. There was a kind of situation, you say anything, they will say impossible. So we started, you know, telling them within our setup there are certain things possible, and you can function if you have a desire. Yes, leadership, there is a huge crisis in the country. I don't know, there is no dearth of intellectuals in the country, but nobody willing to accept the challenge. That is another problem. You know, everybody wants to be on comfort zone. So no. See that they understand the complication, institutional complications. So very few people knowingly accept such challenge.
Well, first of all, I just want to, it's difficult when your own city is being talked about not to be lured into a kind of anecdotal mode, which is should be avoided. But I just very quickly want to say that it's really quite marvelous to see both Rahul and Sabyasachi sitting there. Both of them have played really quite a transformative role. And in that museum campus itself, Sabyasachi has changed the entire culture. When I went to college at Elphinstone College, which was just across the road, you could actually see the building. Yeah. People used to treat the museum as the place where it identified where you changed buses. Museum was a bus station. Nobody even went in. The people would say, where are you going? Museum. And why are you going to museum? To change the bus. Now, it was just a bus because there are 2 or 3, it's a network, a node of bus stops there. So, you know, now, of course, it has this wonderful gift shop plus lecture theater. I sit there often in the monsoon, drinking tea and eating samosas. And in that, you know, outside there, it's one of the nicest, in a city where there are not many environmentally friendly, pleasurable spaces where you can just sit, you know, in a kind of inside-outside relation. Rahul's built a wonderful building, and Sabyasachi has really changed the whole culture. And I remember my utter embarrassment before we were introduced at a meeting in New Delhi organized by the American, the Indian Ministry of Culture and the American
Asia Society.
Yeah, we were there, and my talk, I was asked to give an opening talk, and it actually began with the moribund nature of the Prince of Wales Museum in Bombay. And it literally began rather like I said it, that it was a cataleptic organization that had fallen asleep sometime in the 50s or 40s and had not woken up. Rip Van Winkle moment. And I remember Sabyasachi saying nothing. I mean, if I was in his place, I would have, immediately started throwing the mic around the place. But with his wonderful, wise, and deeply modest, but also deeply effective, he said nothing. And then when he was asked to speak, he said, I think Homi Bhabha has given an introduction to my institution. I don't have, and I was dying of embarrassment. I wanted to hide, but I was talking about a time when it was like that. And what you say, Sabyasachi, about, these endless problems that people throw in you. I mean, we have some of the most wonderful, even public, buildings. If you go down Mahatma Gandhi Road, there was a remarkable Victorian white-wall Laidlaw in what used to be a very fine shop during the British period, is now the Indian Handloom Association place. They've got the most fabulous, fabulous spaces, double galleried interiors. And I love the shop because it just is architecturally so wonderful. But in fact, when you go in, anything you ask for, there's only one answer: not available. Not available. Everything is not available. And so I called for the manager. I said, now tell me something. Why do you get such a buzz about everything being not available? So there is a real problem of resourcing things and actually putting things through. And you, of course, have done a major difference. Now, my question, I apologize, I'm always usually in the chair telling people to stop giving lectures and ask questions. But I do have a question for you, and I apologize to you for that preamble. But you are doing everything you can, and I know this from my personal interactions with you and personal and observation. You're doing every single thing you can to make this a site of a kind of cultural cosmopolitanism, to remind people of the rich interaction of different cultures, peoples, historical moments. Indeed, you're doing even more than that. It's not only Bombay's multiculturalism, if I might put it that way, but you're bringing to the city so much from beyond the city and confronting people who would often not have a chance to see these things and, widening their landscape and horizon. However, it's very distressing that the cultural unit of our current government, and I was just reading the document the other day, says, I forget the name of the gentleman who is the head of the cultural unit, says basically, my role now, our role, is cultural nationalism. We are committed to cultural nationalism, and that's what we want to do. The head of the Indian Historical Association says that his role for his tenure is to make people in India, to establish the historical verity of the myths, and to go around looking at ancient historical monuments to establish that they were Hindu monuments. So you, my dear Sabyasachi, are so way out on the edge, or maybe you're not, but I want to ask you, do you feel that this very innovative and very positive role that you're playing in the city with some of your other colleagues at other museums and other cultural institutions, will you be able to carry on, or will there be some kind of restriction on your very generous institutional imagination? Now, don't say anything that will get you into trouble.
Answer not available.
See, what you are saying is true. The change of government policy, ideology, we are all concerned. Now, the advantage we have being an autonomous institute, we are not supported by the government, and we really don't need any support from them. So there is not much interference, but in different ways, they may interfere because we have the same government in the state. Unfortunately or unfortunately, center and the state, if they pursue this kind of nationalism agenda, indirectly or directly may create some kind of impact on cultural institutes. Now, again, it depends. We had enough bitter experience in past. Some kind of pressure tactics. You have to do it, and again, 5 fingers are not alike. I remember one, very politically connected, powerful gentleman wanted to do something on Shivaji, that light and sound in the museum campus, and I did not allow. So he threatened me. He literally threatened me, and he said, "You have to come with the permission letter at my doorstep." So I said, India is a democratic country. This director will not come to your doorstep. I have every right to step down. Some new director will come with the permission letter. So there is a pressure tactics. Fortunately, our trustees, they are very supportive. Hoping against hope, nothing will happen. At the most, they may create little pressure, but I don't think they can change our, our approach, and not much interference in cultural institutes. There are sensitive people. There will be some protest.
Thank you very much, Sabyasachi.
You had a question. Could you pass the mic, please? And if you might introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Dinyar Patel. I'm a PhD student in the history department here, and I'm writing my dissertation on Dadabhai Naoroji. So not much relation with the museum itself, but with the general genre of heritage in Bombay. Wanted to ask you at least about your conservation lab facilities. I've heard lots of good things about it, having worked in Delhi and in Bombay also. The other main problem with heritage conservation in terms of heritage, in terms of historical items, is archival material, right? I mean, right across the street, you have the Maharashtra State Archives,
Yes,
where
yes.
I think you have also
Yes.
literally witnessed things like Mahatma Gandhi's arrest warrant from 1922 disintegrate in my hands. And they have fans whirring all the time in a building that hasn't been renovated since 1882, and as a result, literally newspapers start to disintegrate and fly away, literally. Has there been any initiative at Prince of Wales to work with archival material, and even, I mean, with all the difficulties of getting government institutions involved, reaching out to them and trying to help them? Because I know, sorry, just one more thing. I know, for example, even INTAC is using preservation standards that the British Library will look at aghast. I mean, they're still using lamination materials. They've destroyed a ton of material, both in Bombay, I won't disclose where, and also in Delhi.
See, what I can say, we have a very strong desire to have a proper archive, city archive. But our problem, again, space constraint. We lost Charles Corrier's archive. He wanted to give his entire archive to museum as gift, but we could not create space, and I had to say, sorry. It's a huge loss for the city. Now, the problem, though it is a museum, we don't call us city museum. We are, national level museum. We have to look at many other issues. But the major problem we are facing, space constraint. we are creating our own archive. So, all museum related information will be available at the museum, but the city, I think the city government has a responsibility, the state has a responsibility to create better infrastructure for archive.
Shaheen.
Times of India has a wonderful archive.
My name is Shaheen Pirzada. My background is history, but I work next door in food service. Thank you very much for your very interesting lecture. It was really very interesting. From the pictures I was watching, I could see the Buddhist sculpture, the paintings, everything. But being a multicultural museum, does it have an Islamic section also?
That's a good question, very good question. We don't have any dedicated space for Islamic section, Islamic art section. This is something, I am raising in different forums, not only my museum. You will not find any Islamic art section in any Indian museums. We are trying to create, looking at our collection, we are trying to create a small section dedicated to Islamic art. And what Dr. Bhava said, I don't know what would be the action of the government authorities and other political parties, but we have decided to create a section dedicated to Islamic art. Now, we have wonderful Mughal art collection, but they are with the miniatures, decorative art. They are all mixed up. They are all mixed up. We did one exhibition on Hajj, temporary exhibition. We started doing things in a different direction, knowing the surrounding and the whole environment. At least my institute trying to do something, and large number of Islamic community involved in the museum development, education department. So the question, how do we go beyond being multicultural societies to being intercultural society? So I'm not very happy with the multicultural. That is the politicians they use, because they want multicultural society to remain. We have to go beyond being multicultural society to being intercultural. So there has to be some intercultural dialogue among different communities. And the first, as part of that initiative, intercultural dialogue, we did one program. It's most unfortunate, even after independence, 63 years of independence, we have schools for Christians, we have schools for Islamic section, Hindu, Buddhist, Jain. So what we did, we picked up students, 10 students from different schools, from different communities. And we wanted them to write an essay on Akbar, the great Mughal emperor. He was a secular, on his religion. And trust me, everyone participated, 116 students participated, and then there was a panel discussion among the students. And parents also participated. And at the end, they all spoke for non-violence. They all spoke for secularism, friendship. So something started, but that is only in few institutes, exceptional. And we are working this intercultural dialogue. This is one of the important objectives of our education department, that how we start the conversation between different religions, different communities, where you appreciate each other's culture. I think that's more important in today's world.
Thank you.
We have a question there. Could you oh, sorry, here, Shamali, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Shalmali. I'm from the Graduate School of Design. I'm doing history, theory, and criticism here in architecture. So I was wondering, you spoke about making the museum more inclusive and including the public and things like that. So you spoke about that in terms of education and things. So I'm wondering, architecturally, if you have, or through design, if you have thought of any methods or measures in which you can include people, because like when I look at the museum, there is, I don't know if it's like a post-colonial sentiment or something, but there's something imperial about the structure. And like when I compare it to, say, the Gandhi Smarak in Ahmedabad, that building is more obviously inclusive. Like it's a humble structure, but that's not the case with the Prince of Wales Museum. So like, for instance, in the Pompidou Center in Paris, they have this whole street culture that's going on there, which makes the structure more inclusive. It includes the public sphere. So have you thought of any such things in the Prince of Wales Museum? Because I mean, you have these this massive grounds in front, but I don't know how much it's being used.
Let me correct you. Of course, you know, Rahul studied our building very well. He knows our building very well. Indo-Saracenic style, it's a combination of Hindu, Islamic, and Western architectural elements. That dome, the huge dome, it's a copy of Galgambo's Bijapur. And as you enter, the pillars represent Jain temple, Bimala Bashini temple. There are 8 pillars. So the whole concept is secular. Yes, that Western elements, you know, little powerful, but Mughal jalis and everything, you know, you see in the same building.
If you look at it from the road, it seems to be a very, you know,
I think you can explain.
Yeah. But yeah, the autonomy of this thing.
Yeah.
That, we'll come back to. Sorry, go ahead. We'll come back to that. I'd like to respond to that.
I'm Mary McWilliams, and I'm the curator for Islamic and later Indian art just a few blocks down at the Harvard Art Museums. And we have just reopened our doors after, I don't even know how many years, I've lost count, enormous transformation. And so I just want to say how impressed I was with what you have done. And I don't know how many years it took you. But my question is probably a more museum-centric question, excuse me, but it follows on what everyone else has said. I'm so impressed with what you've done with your outreach, with your education program, with your conservation, but I haven't heard you speak about the curators. You've talked about the development of the collection in the 1920s and 30s when the private collections were coming, and I wonder how your new mission, the multicultural, intercultural, the effort to bring international art into Mumbai, how does that affect your acquisition strategy? Or are you trying to acquire more collections and more art?
See, we have established acquisition policy. Very few cultural institutes in India, they have, you know, established policy. As part of our policy, we do purchase, and there is a separate art purchase committee. Again, you know, with the help of trustees and corporates, we created a little fund for art purchase. And when it comes to collection, we see that, you know, the percentage, if we are buying, you know, something from Hindu, we are also buying from Islamic art. So that is always there in our mind. Even Jain art, Buddhist art, Hindu art. Now we started modern and contemporary art.
I was interested
It's a new development.
Working with, you said there was a national gallery of modern contemporary art?
Yeah, but what is interesting, you know, in Mumbai, people giving their collection as gift to the museum. So many people, you know, they come, of course, you know, museum is not a dumping ground. We have a policy and we see the collection. You will be happy to know Jahangir Sabawala collection. Shirin, she is not keeping well, but she came and she expressed her desire to hand over the collection to museum, even the archive of Sabawala. So people, coming and giving to museum, and they started feeling this is my museum, and museum will take care. So something started happening, and when it comes to purchase, yes, we are very strict. It's not that only one area is developing. We have to see that all parts of the body developing simultaneously.
Are you also looking for a more international collection, though, or are you focusing largely on Indian art?
Not much, except gifts, not much, yeah. Large number of European decorative arts, people they are giving as gift.
But for each of these collections, you also have separate curators, right? For the Nichols
Yeah,
Center.
separate
So
departments.
So there are a series of curators for each of these collections. I
Separate
think.
departments, separate.
Sorry, there's maybe the last two questions.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
Oh, yes, I do have a question.
Okay,
Hi, my name is Mehrotra. I'm a PhD student in history here, and this February I actually worked in the library a little bit. I researched the Tata family and philanthropy, so obviously a large part of my work is about Prince of Wales. Well, small part of that, but it's really important in my work. So I wanted to hear more about what you were saying in response to Dinyar's question about the archives and about what kinds of interactions do you see in the future, next 5-10 years, with scholars studying Indian art history at the museum. And in relation to that also, the publication of the East Meets West for my work was very helpful. So is there a plan for future publications, and what does that look like?
I met you before?
Yeah, we met
Yeah,
very briefly, yeah.
I remember.
Godrej, yeah.
Yes. See, we have a separate department, research and publication. Every year we produce at least 2 research publications, 2 research books on different subjects, and started a new initiative producing documentary films. We are in filmmaking. We are perhaps the only institute in the country in filmmaking. And till date, we produced 13 documentary films on different aspects and latest architectural heritage of Mumbai and the textile. I gave 2 CDs to South Asia. Books, there is a committee. There is a separate committee headed by Dr. Shoryu Doshi. And now we are reviving. In past, we had Prince of Wales Museum Research Bulletin, which that everyone knows about the bulletin because of its quality, but it was stopped in 1972, and now we are reviving it. Most likely the first issue will be available in March 2015. So we started the dialogue interaction with the scholars all over the world, and it is a part of policy that at least 4 scholars from abroad participate. If we are taking 8 from India, 4 from outside. So there is a policy, and so far things are happening. And when you visit our museum shop, you see some new publication, exhibition catalog. This year, on 28th November, Alice Bonner collection from Rydberg opening at the museum as part of that international policy that every year 1 exhibition. So jointly we publish the catalog. For the first time, people, they come to know about Alice Bonner collection.
One last question.
Thank you. My name is Adrienne Landsman, and because I have been, in the past, because I have been research director of the HBS fund, I wonder whether there are tax considerations or estate considerations in India that encourage the gifts to institutions such as yours. But I also have another set of questions from being based here in Cambridge, and that is, I wonder whether your visit here has been long enough for you to take in these 3 places. One, our brand newly renovated museum right around the corner. I hope that Mr. Lenz has given you a guided tour.
Congratulations, wonderful.
Yes,
wonderful
especially
space.
of the conservation area. And as you know, our museum director says that art conservation in the United States began here at the FOG. So there might be some technology transfer opportunities there. 2, have you visited the Children's Museum in Boston? And 3, as long as you are here at Harvard, you really ought to go over to the business school and visit the big new Tata building. Tata has been very generous to Harvard Business School, and that also is brand newly opened. That big building has been brand newly opened this year after some construction. And lastly, I want to say that when the architect Renzo Piano spoke at the Graduate School of Design here on November 6th about his design of the museum, the Harvard Art Museums, one of the things he said was that he has heard the word impossible in every language that there is.
I think I have to come back again.
Yes.
I
That's
saw
your
some.
answer, yes. Sorry, we'll just last one and then we'll close.
Thank you. My name is Diantha Schul, and I used to be head of interpretive programs at the Library of Congress. And I want to say what a pleasure and an inspiration it is to hear your observations about this transformation that's going on. And a number of thoughts came to me. I write on libraries and archives a great deal, and some abroad. And it seems to me you've somehow captured the essence of a new awareness of the importance of public space. Even though there is something intimidating about the facade of the museum building, you've obviously created a vital atmosphere. And the intercultural aspects, the balance you seem to be making or trying to achieve, and I don't think it's ever perfect, between education and curatorial. But what I kept wondering, listening to you, was what inspired your vision? What models have informed your thinking? And I was struck by the comment of this gentleman here about the institutional imagination that you have, and thought about houses of culture in Brazil and the Singapore Library and the Salt Lake City Library and the Vancouver Library. What kinds of places, both physically, curatorially, and educationally, have informed your thinking?
First of all, who influenced? I was born and brought up at Santiniketan, so Rabindranath Tagore, and his thinking universalism. So yes, Tagore influenced me immensely. I got an opportunity to work at the Victoria and Albert Museum, London, for some time. Victoria and Albert Museum, British Museum, they influenced, and many people in Mumbai, they influenced, and the energy, Mumbai energy.
Yeah. It emerged from organically. Yeah.
So, and just to sort of close this and pick up on a couple of, I think, very interesting questions that were raised. I mean, clearly, I think the way Mr. Mukherjee has imagined this place is a public space, really, in the city. And I think Homi, even alluding to the fact that there are very few spaces where one can, sit in the way, enjoy nature, the garden. I mean, these are very important in a city like Mumbai, and they're small things but very precious. And I think in converting this into a public space, there's been many challenges, because you begin to confront the question of the identity of the museum and its own connection, which is linked to the ideological message, which then poses these kinds of threats given the present political regime. But also, how do you deal with it physically? And I think to your point of the intimidation, and I think in order to address that, because the building you can't do much with, it's a graded building, it's listed as a grade 1 building. And so the imagination has been to create a series of threshold spaces. So even what was designed as a visitor center was intended as a threshold space which brings you into the museum and yet not right into the building and creates this transition. And I think what Mr. Mukherjee is imagining is a series of these, like the Children's Museum, the Maximula Bhavan, the Goethe Institute on the other end, should act like this as a threshold space, because then you begin to break down this barrier of intimidation through creating these series of thresholds. And I think that begins to dissipate what might be perceived as something apart. But also I think to Homi's point, I think in my view, this is where I think this puts them in a great situation, because by making it a public space and creating forms of discussion and dissipating what is otherwise seen as a kind of ideological stance in terms of either curating the collection very sharply or not curating it as sharply as the political regime might want, is a great way to kind of, in a sense, I don't want to use the word resist, but stay on the fringe of what might be a threat.
Wait and watch kind of situation.
Correct. So it keeps you in a holding strategy position, because you can move these debates around. So I mean, I think this imagination of making it a civic and a public node, both spatially but also in terms of its programming, I think has been a big contribution to the city. And thank you very much for coming and sharing this with us.
Thank you.